Do you want a one-word hack that's going to really speed up how fast you get the results in your life and business and avoid you getting stuck in the pitfalls of going slow? That one word is what we're talking about on the podcast today. So I have a confession to make. For years, I struggled to actually be fit, to work out, to actually be physical. I sit at a desk all the time. I don't live a very active lifestyle, and I always struggled to actually get into the gym, to actually work out. I just hated it. I try to see all the ROI. I'm very ROI minded, but I could never get it right. I would join something and I'd do it for a little bit and I'd fizzle out. I'd buy the mountain bike. I'd do it for a little bit, then I'd fizzle out. I always think this is going to be the thing. And then after a few weeks, a month goes by, I fall back into the old way of just not exercising. And when I realized I was missing this one ingredient, is what we're talking about on the podcast today, everything changed. And this one ingredient is accountability. So in the fall last year, I was like, this is it. I am lacking accountability. I am just trying to hold myself accountable. But right now in this season, I am failing that. So in the fall last year, I was fed up. Like I fed up of trying things and failing, so to say. And so I hired a personal trainer. Now, a personal trainer is not cheap, but what they do is they come to your house and they force you to work out. They have a forced accountability that I cannot get out of. Even if I had to drive somewhere to get personal training, I would not do it. Okay, this guy comes to our house, he knocks on the door, and I have to do it regardless of how I'm feeling. And some days I'm feeling up to it, but most days I'm not. But every day I do it, I'm thankful and grateful and I feel great. Okay, so this one thing has changed the game for me. Now I have this in my business, I have this in other areas, but I don't know why I wasn't applying it in this area of my life. And if you don't have accountability in the goals you want to reach, whether it's self-accountability, now that works sometimes, or someone else holding you accountable, it's so, so powerful. And also as leaders, as people who are leading someone in your life, whether you're leading your kids or you're leading people in your business, this is the one thing that keeps things moving faster and helps you stay out of that pit of procrastination and moving slow. And I wish we knew this 2 years ago because we've had some projects that have been moving very slow because we didn't start with accountability.
About 2 years ago, we started building something in our backyard. It's called an ADU, additional dwelling unit. It's basically a small house, and we have big dreams for it. But when we started the process, we did not have good accountability with our contractors. We love our contractors. They've done an amazing work, but some feedback we've gotten and just seeing the progress of this build happen, it is going way slower than it needs to be. And honestly, it's on us because from the beginning, we did not hold our contractors accountable. We didn't ask for deadlines. We didn't move the ball. And we could say a lot of different things like, oh, we were super busy. We had a baby. We did a business launch. We don't really need this back unit. And those are all true things. But when it comes down to it, especially when we want this done in the next month, we're wishing that a year ago, a year and a half ago, when we all started this, when we broke ground, that we had held them accountable. And I think in a lot of different areas, it is important to have systems in place and language that you can use to hold people accountable.
Now, Chelsea and I, if you know us, what you do on the show, we're pretty chill individuals. Okay. So when we work with people, we're just like, hey, it's all good. It's all good. Right. And I think that comes off as like, hey, I can slack off. So if another project comes on over and I just got to sneak it in, these people aren't going to get mad at me. It's totally okay. Now, it's awesome to be grace-filled and very nice to people, but we have added this accountability factor in our business, just even in the last 6 months, more specifically. And we have rules for how we do this in our business with the people we lead and in our life. And we've seen things move so much faster because of it. So that's why we're doing a podcast about this, because you need to add this. So today on the show, we're going to give you some language patterns to hold people accountable in a nice way. We're going to give you some strategies on what you need to have true accountability. And we dare you, try this. Try this on a project, whether it's a house project, whether it's a project we're working with as some sort of contractor or vendor, or whether it's a project in your business where you're managing something, or maybe it's with your kids. Okay, so try this and it will work.
So bringing it back to our contractor projects, one of the things as we look back that would have been so helpful to establish from the very beginning is define what done looks like.
When you're working with people on projects, if they don't have clarity, it's hard for them to have momentum and hard for them to set milestones to like reach to that goal. So if you don't define what done looks like, It's your bad as a leader because you haven't cast the vision clearly. And not just what done looks like, but what good looks like, what acceptable looks like, what
Mhm.
awesome looks like, right? And so defining what done looks like is one thing that we never start a project without defining what done looks like. And this one thing has given team members or people we're leading total clarity. And so if you want to do this, there are 4 W's that you can remember to make sure you have on every project, every task, everything you're doing. It should have these 4 W's.
So the 4 W's we want you to remember are what, when, who, and why.
So you start your project, okay? You're working with someone. First, you're going to find clarity on what has done look like, okay? Then you're going to define a when. You're going to put a deadline on the thing. And the best way I found to do this is ask the person to self set their own deadline. Okay.
Mhm.
So this is really nice because you're not saying, hey, can you get this done by next Friday? You're saying, when do you anticipate you could have this done by? And they set their own timeline. So it's like you're just holding them accountable to what they said. So you got what, you got when, you have who. So who's involved with the project? So if it's like a project in your business where there's multiple people, there may be milestones or maybe multiple people. So we always want to define who. If you have a task list or something and no one's assigned to that thing, everyone's going to assume someone else is doing the
Mhm.
thing. And so it drops the ball. When we're working with the contractor, we have multiple people involved. We got the contractor, but then there's some vendors he hires, right? And then there's like, we have an interior designer. We always want to make sure that everyone's really clear on who they're handing the ball to and what's like the next step, right? So once you finish this, you're going to hand the ball to the interior designer. She then is going to do this thing and she's going to hand the ball back to you, right? So we
Mhm.
define who's involved. So it doesn't just get stuck in like, oh, I just thought you were going to do that. And then everyone's thinking someone else is doing something and they're not actually passing the ball. And lastly, this is one that a lot of people forget is the why. When you communicate the why behind why it's important to hit this deadline or why it's important to get it done by a certain amount of time, when you communicate that why, it rallies everyone around that thing. Hey, we'd love to have this done by the summer of 2024. Hey, we'd love to have this project done by the 1st of July, 2023, because we have these really good friends. We haven't seen them for years. They've been traveling across the world on this big long trip with their kids, and they're going to come to Chico to visit. And we would love to host them in this back house in the end of July. So do you think it's possible for us to hit that deadline so that
Mm.
why? Okay. So
Mhm.
the so that it gives it just this bigger thing, right? Now that's like not even that big of a thing, but it gives like, this is why we're fighting for this date. And it's not just like, oh, we're just doing it because we want to be mean.
I also think with when it comes time for, vendors, especially, a lawn person, somebody to paint your house, whatever it is, or, you're hiring your first virtual assistant and you're having them help you with a project, people feed off of the energy that you have. And so we're using this contractor analogy a lot. But again, it's like Stephen and I are fairly relaxed people. I would say in our business, we're a little more like we've got the deadline, team rally around, but we've had to learn that skill. And so sometimes I think like our business takes priority in pushing those hard deadlines, whereas our personal life, it's like, oh, it's personal. We don't need to get it done. But when in reality, I think the personal stuff you really need accountability in, because I don't know, I think we could probably do a poll and have so many people raise their hand about like, oh yeah, this vendor, this contractor, this person said this or that. And I think it's just because that's just the way that industry goes. And if they sense at all, like, oh, I can push this person around, they don't want me to be as quick, I don't have as much relationship with them. And that's just the reality of like what happens. And so having language like this and clear expectation from the beginning, I believe will help you move projects either in your business or your life, move it along much quicker.
Yeah. And again, we love our contractors. I don't think they're listening to this podcast. The reason it's going so slow is because we didn't do this at the beginning.
Yes, it's
Because who
awesome.
we are now in our business is different than who we were 2 years ago when we started this project. But we also, the reason we bring up contractors is because a lot of people in these service-based businesses are honestly terrible at this. And like, if you're a business owner, it can be the most frustrating thing working with people who don't know how to like,
Manage
yeah, like
their
manage the
stuff.
business. Like they know
Yeah.
how to swing the hammer, they know how to do the trade, but they just honestly suck at the business side of things. It's super frustrating. So you actually have to lead them, right? You can't
Hmm.
assume that they're going to do the thing. And it feels weird to babysit an adult who's a lot older than me, but
Hmm.
you just got to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that you can really help people out is not call them out, but you can call them up. Okay. This is something we learned from a guy who came in and trained our whole team on this, which was so cool. He said self-awareness is one of the biggest things you can do in leadership. Self-awareness, just helping people be
Mhm.
aware of what's happening, helps people lead themselves, and it'll fix like 90% of leadership issues. Just bringing attention to the thing, not jumping into like hero mode and trying to fix it all yourself, but actually just bringing attention to the thing and letting the person lead themselves. You don't want to steal glory from them for fixing the thing, right? So
Mhm.
you want to just bring attention to the thing in a nice, gentle way. Hey, are you aware that when this happens, it comes off this way? You
Mhm.
know, and like, oh my gosh, I never thought of
Mhm.
that. You know, like I remember even just like texting someone who like they were just new to texting, and we're just like, hey, are you aware that your texts come off as like very rude? Like,
I would want to know that if I were
yeah,
a
like
person.
I know it's weird, but like if you just throw like a smiley face in there, it sounds in your head a lot
Yes.
different, you
Yeah.
know? And it's like, oh wow, I never knew that. Right. Like it's like when someone tells you something is stuck in your teeth, right?
Mhm.
It's not awkward. People are mostly very grateful for it. And you could do it in a really nice way. If you're hesitant to do it, you can always do permission-based coaching where you say, hey, would you be open to me just giving me a little bit of feedback on what I just saw there? Because if they're not, totally okay, right? Like if you're not invited to the table, if you're not invited in the conversation, it's going to come across as criticism, right?
Mhm.
And that's going to cause division. But if you kind of say, hey, would you be open to me speaking into this just a little bit? I see something here. I think it'll really help you out and help you with future clients. Oh, yeah, totally. Tell me. Now you have permission. Okay. And you still
Mhm.
do it gently, but you're calling people up. You're helping them be self aware so they can lead themselves.
Mhm. I did this recently with a company that I use to print family albums, and there was an issue with needing an extra book, and so I emailed in customer service. I was very polite, and I said, "Hey, this is like the second time this has happened," and the lady responded to me, and with that response, I asked, like, "When do you think this will be resolved by, or when can I expect to hear from you?" Because for all I know, this customer service person has a million different, clients and people she's working with, and she's probably only working a certain amount of hours. And so I kind of wanted accountability of like, hey, I'm serious about this. What is your timeline? Because I'm genuine, is it a week's timeline for you to fix this? And if it is a week's timeline, that's okay. I just want to know what the timeline is so I can expect to hear from you and have this resolved.
Now, the language you use when holding people accountable is very powerful, right? Because there's subtle language shifts that make it feel less reactive.
Hmm.
And when you're reactive to something, people get in defensive mode,
Mm.
right? So if you're just like, "Why isn't this done yet?" or like, "What have you been doing with your time?" Like that is immediately going to cause someone to be going into reactive mode or
Hmm.
defense mode, and they're going to be backpedaling and just it's going to cause division. So recently we did a training with our team. We gave them three like proactive phrases that you can use to hold someone accountable, right? It really helps if you defined what done look like and you define times at the beginning,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because if we come in, we are doing this with our contractors this week, it feels a little weird because we haven't been doing it from the beginning, right? But something like this, hey, walk me through the steps that you'll take to finish this project, right? Maybe you're getting close to the end and like you like really you hope that they're working on it, but you don't want to say, "Hey, what have you been doing? Are you working on this?" That's reactive. That's going to cause them to go in defense mode. You're
Hmm.
going to say, "Hey, walk me through the steps. Do you see any obstacles that might come away between now and then?" Right? That's a really easy one, just to kind of see if there's any potential obstacles or walls that might come up that you could
Hmm.
help them on, support them
Hmm.
on. And then another one is just like, how are things progressing? Right? Instead of just like, "Hey, what have you been doing? I haven't, like, hi, how are things progressing since we last talked on Wednesday?" Right?
Hmm.
I found with some certain type of people, like just having a weekly rhythm or a monthly rhythm or some sort of rhythm where it's a check-in, it also helps both sides stay accountable. Because I'm not great at remembering to babysit people, but having something in the calendar is just like, oh, I think about this once a week or every two
Hmm.
weeks or once a month, right? It's just something that we know there's going to be a check-in and we can leave that meeting or we leave that check-in with tasks that have the four W's on them. And then on the next call, we can look back and hold each other accountable. If I had to do
Hmm.
stuff, it's like, did we all do the stuff? Cool. Did you do the stuff? I did the stuff. Awesome. This is just so simple, but it has helped things move so much faster by adding this one thing,
Hmm.
accountability.
I hope that you take some of these language patterns and apply them to your business or people that you're working with. I think just in general, people just need accountability, and having powerful language that isn't bossy or manipulative, but it's a win-win for both sides, I think is so important. And as business owners, we need to communicate clearly, whether it's a social media post or it's someone with our team. Like, Our words are powerful, and you can do this in such a loving and gentle way, but it's also important to establish this from the beginning. So I'm excited to see how you implement these. I know for me personally, I've been implementing these in a lot of different areas, and I'm getting the responses that I need to help things move along. So thanks for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show.
Hey, and it would mean the world to us if you could leave a review. I know I asked on a previous episode, but I just want to be really clear with what the definition of done looks like. So if we're defining the four W's, when, let's do this right now. Okay. Just immediately, you got your phone. It's super easy. Just search the
Go do
show,
it.
leave a review. Okay. Just tell us how the show has impacted you. We would love to hear from you. Who? The who is you. And the why is it helps us reach more families. So if you care about having time freedom, financial freedom, and leaving a thriving legacy for your family, and not just your family, but for others, this show gets in the hands of more people when we hear your voice on the review. So that is me holding you accountable. I'll check in with you on the next podcast and see if you've completed the task.
All right. We'll see you next week. Thank you guys. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. Hey, if you are not a part of our Rainmaker Mastermind, we have a new opportunity for you to book a one-on-one strategy call with one of our Rainmaker coaches.
If you want to get a call with them, see if it's a good fit for you to work with us to build a business that allows you to have time freedom and financial freedom, you can get that call at makeitrainmama.com/podcast. That's makeitrainmama, MOMMA.com/podcast.